Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome back to another video of Modern Warships. I'm The Unknown. It is currently 6:48 p.m., so I'm recording this video a little late, but I wanted to talk about something that was brought to my attention in my kill switch or strike switch nerf video. So first of all, the devs announced that it wasn't the strike switch that was nerfed, it was just the air defenses that were severely buffed and rebalanced. So, with that said, right, the strike switch just wasn't nerfed, but a comment on that video really got my attention, and, you know, it made me think, in a way. So, this comment reads, here's a slightly different angle. Imagine you're Artstorm or the devs, if they're part of something else, and you release something as OP as Strike Switch. Now, don't get me wrong, Strike Switch is insanely overpowered. So, with that said, right, he reads, what's going on in your head? No clue, except maybe a desperate attempt for a major sales boost from the loving pay-to-win community. So basically, when something severely overpowered comes out, you know, naturally, people are going to want to spend money on it. So, with that said, right, and let a couple months pass. In the span of these past couple months, you've released a lot of other jets, but because of how overpowered Strike Switch is, everybody, like, overshadows all of the other strike fighters. Basically, like, oh, well, this strike fighter's good, but it's not a Strike Switch. So, and you know what? I've been guilty of this too. There's a lot of strike fighters here that I don't give credit because subconsciously I want them all to be as good as Strike Switch, but in reality they're battle pass, so they really can't be as good. But that doesn't mean they aren't good. Everybody calls them mid, bad, or trash. Now you're in a bit of a predicament. So, you know, that forces you to think, right? People are focusing on how good and overpowered Strike Switch is, and they forgot how good other strike fighters are. Strike Switch has everything. It has insane health, it's insanely fast, but granted, it's pay to win, so it has to be insanely fast and insanely healthy. So, in this video, I'm going to show you other strike fighters that are pretty good, to be honest, and should be brought to light. So yeah, one of the planes that I want to take a look at first is the MiG-41 Super Fulmar. I believe I have that plane. Yeah, I do have it. I just gotta find it. Actually, we'll look at the SH-37 Viggen first, because this is a very slept-on plane. Now, this plane has 11,180 health, but it's slow. So this plane is not Strike Switch material, but it is still really good especially after its little buff that it got with the cannons being more accurate. So yeah, guys can read the stats if you want. I've already did the review for that, but let's go ahead and take this out of the test mode and show you guys. Alright, let's go ahead, test out the Viggen here. The Viggen is the newest Battle Pass plane that was added to the game, and it has a very high burst damage. It has a lot of anti-sub, which is something that is very important in this day and age, and it has look at the burst damage of this thing. 200,000 burst damage with a relatively decent speed. I mean, it does 800 or so knots. Like, this thing is a very good plane, very slept on, underrated in my opinion. Again, like, people would subconsciously be like, oh, well, it's no Strike Switch, but dude, this plane honestly is a very good alternative. It has a very high burst, and it has a lot of unguided missiles on it that can be used for baiting flares. So this is a very good choice if you cannot afford the Strike Switch. Another plane that is worth mentioning is the F2 Super Kai, I believe? Yes, the F2 Super Kai. This is probably the second most used strike fighter in the game. Like, if you don't have kill switch or strike switch, people are going to be using this plane, and there's a good reason behind it. It has good burst damage, and overall, it's like a very fast plane. It's very nice. So let's go ahead. We're going to go take this one in test mode too. So the speed of this one, I think, is a little higher than the... no, actually, it's not higher than the Viggen. The Viggen is actually faster than the Super Kai is. The Super Kai is essentially just like a reskinned F-16. But the thing that I like most about the Super Kai is how versatile it is. It doesn't have that many missiles. However, it still does a lot of damage, per se. So here we can see with the cannons how much burst damage this thing actually does. A respectable 174,000 damage. With good decent speed and good range, this is another viable choice for those that don't own the strike switch. Another highly slept on plane that a lot of people don't use, surprisingly, is the MiG-41 Super Fulmar. This was a Battle Pass plane. I forgot when it came out per se, but this is honestly another really good plane. So I believe that this thing has a top speed. Yeah, this thing has a relatively fast top speed too, 866 knots, and it has a lot of missiles on it. Also, it looks really good. It's a 6th generation plane. So it is a very good looking plane. Let's go see that burst damage. $160,000 damage, but you do get a lot of missiles. There's a lot of missiles in the armaments here. So, again, another really good choice. MiG-41 Super Fulmar is honestly one of the most underrated Battle Pass strike fighters in this day and age in 2025. I'm surprised not many people use this thing. It is honestly a really good strike fighter. A lot of spamming, which means missiles can pierce air defenses more because you have way more missiles to fire at, you know, air defenses and ships and whatnot. And the more missiles you have, the more chances you have of piercing the air defenses. Now, arguably, the second best strike fighter in the game has to be the J-16. This is, again, another highly used strike fighter for those that don't own the strike switch. Now, obviously, there's a multitude of reasons why the J-16 is hella used. And it's because of its insanely high burst damage with its, like, insane range. And its speed is relatively fast. It's not the fastest, but here we go. Let's go ahead and take a look at the burst damage here. A respectable 185,000 damage. That's actually That's actually very freaking high. Now, the main reason I like to use it, and I say this because I don't use it at all, but when I do use it, just listen to the cannon. What's not to love about the sound of that cannon? Also, the camera angle is another thing. This plane has one of the best camera angles so far. You can see the entire plane. It's not like zoomed in, like you're not playing with the plane where the camera angle's like this, and it's super awkward. That's another reason the J-16 is highly used and very, very good. And yet another good Chinese strike fighter to use is the J-35, arguably one of the best. Again, it's probably like the king of strike fighters, even today. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this thing, again, is also just another good freaking strike fighter to use. So the main reason people like using the J-35 is because it has guided missiles on it, which the guided missiles can be used to bait flares, as these things are anti-flare. So the guided missiles of these planes, they do relatively high damage. I think they do 80,000 damage, and if you do the restock trick, you could be doing insane amounts of damage in far range. Like, just look at this. 81,000 damage on top of the other amount of damage you can do with all the other cannons. It's honestly quite insane. It's about 170,000 damage. We'll do another burst session with this. There you guys have it. 178,000 damage. Decent speed, guided missile. Honestly, one of the more perfect strike fighters. And last but not least, we have the Pan-Spatial Rombat. One main reason people like using this is because it has anti-flare missiles on it, along with a very accurate cannon at very long range. This will be the last strike fighter that I mentioned in this video. So yes, another thing that people love using the strike fighter for is that its ability to hover. So you can basically just camp over a target essentially and just absolutely obliterate them. So here you go. Here's the damage of this thing. $195,000 damage. And again, it's one of the more weirder strike fighters. Like, somehow it just works. Like, it looks very good. It's definitely different. but and also it has really good health as well, along with, you know, a decent speed. This thing has really good range. So again, this is another viable option if you don't have the strike switch. So, with all that said, those are some of the strike fighters that are criminally underrated and overshadowed by the strike switch. And honestly, that dude's comment is pretty valid. I mean, we got so focused, we hyper focused on the fact that strike switch is so overpowered that we forgot about all the other strike fighters that are actually good. And because we were always just comparing them to strike switch, like, oh, this plane's no strike switch. Like, subconsciously, we wouldn't say it that, oh, it's no strike switch, but I would say things like, this thing doesn't do that much damage, or it's not as fast. But if you can get past that, most of the strike fighters, actually all of the strike fighters that I mentioned, are relatively good. And some of them are older than others, and they still do really well to this day. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. I think that dude's comment is insanely valid. I pinned that for a reason so everybody can see it. It's a really good and valid comment. It made me rethink things, because honestly, I was subconsciously guilty of the thing he was talking about, where, you know, strike switch is so good we forgot about all the other ones that are good and stuff. You know, that is a very valid comment. I do appreciate that dude bringing it to light, because it really forced me to think. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Give me you guys' honest feedback, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.